Welcome to our deep dive on the 50-50 mindfulness practice. You sent in this article from Psychology Today, and I'm really curious to kind of unpack it with you.
Oh, it's a great choice. Yeah, it's such a practical technique.
So the article basically says that it's about splitting your attention 50-50, like half on your body and then half on whatever you're doing or whoever you're with.
Right. It's not about being perfectly balanced, but more like just bringing awareness to your physical sensations. Like your breath, your feet on the ground, while you're engaged in the world around you.
So instead of zoning OUT, I'm tuning in to my body while still being present in whatever I'm doing. What's the benefit of that?
Well, the article highlights how your body kind of becomes like an anchor, a touchstone.
Okay.
This physical awareness can help you make clearer decisions and avoid feeling overwhelmed, almost like a built-in stress management system.
I see. Okay. I'm starting to see how this could be useful. The article mentions a woman named Sophia who used this practice during a tough conversation with a friend.
Yes, she had made a careless comment and was really anxious about apologizing.
Instead of just saying, "Ooh, we've all been there," I'm curious, was Sophia able to completely let go of her fear during the apology? Or did the 50-50 practice simply help her manage it?
That's a great question. The article suggests it was more about managing the fear. Sophia noticed her shallow breathing, her clammy hands, all those classic anxiety signs. But instead of being swept away by it, she focused on her feet grounding on the floor and even did some stretches.
So she used those physical sensations to stay grounded while dealing with those difficult emotions. That's interesting. What happened during the actual apology?
Well, as she talked to her friend, she noticed warmth spreading through her body while a bit of fear kind of lingered in her chest.
Hmm.
By staying connected to her physical sensations, she was able to navigate those complex emotions without getting overwhelmed.
This is so fascinating. It's like by tuning into our bodies, we can uncover this hidden emotional landscape that we might otherwise miss.
Exactly. And the article emphasizes this isn't just for apologies. The 50-50 practice can be used in so many situations.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, imagine using it when you're online. Instead of getting lost in the scroll, you might notice how your body reacts to what you're seeing or reading. Are your shoulders tensing up? Is your breathing shallow? It can help you be more mindful of your online experience.
So it's not about judging myself for being online, but more about understanding how it's affecting me physically and maybe making different choices because of that new awareness.
Precisely. And the article also talks about using it during transitions. Like, notice how your body feels as you wrap up work and move into your evening.
This could be a game changer for anyone struggling with work-life balance. Instead of carrying that tension home, you could use the 50-50 practice to create a more mindful shift.
Mm-hmm. The article also suggests starting with someone you have a good relationship with, like a friend or family member. Just observe what happens in your body as you interact with them.
So it's like a training ground for tougher relationships. I imagine this could be really useful when dealing with people who trigger strong reactions in us.
Absolutely. The article highlights this with another story about Sophia and her partner.
Okay.
He caught her eating peanut butter straight from the jar.
Oh, no. Everyone's done that at some point, right? What happened? Was he upset?
Oh, Sophia immediately felt this wave of horror and shame, like she was being judged. But instead of getting defensive, she tuned into those sensations, and it led to a deeper conversation with her partner.
So instead of just reacting to his apparent disapproval, she used her own body as a guide to understand what was really going on.
Yes, and it turns out her partner has some OCD around hygiene, so that look he gave her was more about his fear of germs than anything else.
Wow, so the peanut butter incident was just the tip of the iceberg. By paying attention to her own bodily response, she unlocked a whole new level of understanding in their relationship.
Exactly. And they actually came up with a pretty funny solution. Separate peanut butter jars.
That's hilarious. I love that they found a way to honor both of their needs. This is making me think about the times I've misinterpreted someone's actions because I wasn't paying attention to my own physical reactions.
It's so easy to do.
Yeah.
But the 50-50 practice helps us to slow down and really listen to what our bodies are trying to tell us.
This makes me wonder about the science behind all of this. What's actually happening in the brain when we bring this kind of awareness to our bodies?
That's a great question, and it takes us into some fascinating territory. Our brains are constantly bombarded with information, but we're only consciously aware of a tiny fraction of it.
So it's like we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg and all this other information from our senses is hidden below the surface.
Exactly. And a lot of that hidden information comes from our bodies, our internal sensations, emotions, even subtle muscle movements. But we're often so caught up in our thoughts and external stimuli that we tune out these bodily signals.
And this 50-50 practice is a way to shine a light on those signals, bringing them into our conscious awareness.
Precisely. And when we do that, something really interesting happens. We start to create a more integrated sense of self.
Integrated sense of self. What does that mean?
Think of it this way. We often experience a kind of disconnect between our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Like, we might say one thing, but our body language conveys something completely different.
Oh, yeah, like when you have a bad feeling about someone, but you can't quite explain why.
Exactly. Those gut feelings are often our body's way of communicating with us, but we haven't learned to listen to its language.
So this 50-50 split is like becoming fluent in body language.
Yes. And as we get better at understanding these subtle bodily cues, we bridge the gap between our inner and outer worlds.
So it's not just noticing the sensations, but also understanding what they're trying to tell us. Like, is this tightness in my chest anxiety or excitement?
Exactly. It's about developing deeper self-awareness, encompassing both the physical and the mental emotional.
This is making me think about all those times I've ignored my body's signals and made decisions that weren't truly aligned with my needs or values.
We've all been there. But the 50-50 practice gives us a way to check in with ourselves and make choices that are more in harmony with our whole being.
This all sounds pretty amazing, but are there any potential downsides or challenges to be aware of with this practice?
That's a great question. It's important to remember that this practice isn't about becoming hyper-focused on every sensation.
Right.
It's about approaching our bodies with curiosity and gentleness, not judgment or fear.
So it's more about befriending our bodies than scrutinizing them under a microscope.
Exactly. If the practice brings up difficult emotions or sensations, reaching out to a qualified therapist or mindfulness teacher is always a good idea.
Good advice. It sounds like this practice is a powerful tool, but it's important to use it wisely and with support if needed.
Absolutely. And while it can be incredibly helpful, it's not a replacement for professional help if you're struggling with a mental health condition.
Right. It's a tool that can be used alongside therapy, not a replacement for it. But for those of us looking to deepen self-awareness and live more mindfully, this 50-50 practice seems incredibly valuable.
I agree. And you can start experimenting with it right now, no matter where you are or what you're doing.
This has been so insightful. I'm already feeling inspired to start paying attention to my own subtle body cues. Who knows what I might discover?
That's the beauty of it. It's an ongoing journey of discovery, and each moment offers a new opportunity to tune in and learn something new about ourselves.
But before we get too carried away with our own explorations, let's take a moment to share some key takeaways from our deep dive so far, and then dive into what this all means for you, the listener.
Sounds good. So we've learned that the 50-50 practice is about intentionally splitting your attention between your body and the world around you. This isn't about achieving perfect balance, but about bringing awareness to your physical sensations while you're engaged in your daily life.
Right. We've heard how Sophia used this technique to navigate a challenging apology with a friend, and how it helped her manage her anxiety by staying grounded in her body. We also heard how tuning into her physical reactions during an interaction with her partner led to a deeper understanding of his perspective and ultimately strengthened their relationship.
We've also touched on the science behind this practice, exploring how it helps us integrate our thoughts, feelings, and actions for a more holistic sense of self. And while we've acknowledged the potential challenges, we've emphasized the importance of approaching the practice with gentleness and seeking support if needed.
Exactly. And now we want to turn the focus to you, the listener. We've talked about how the 50-50 practice can help you navigate tough conversations, make more aligned decisions, and even deepen your understanding of your relationships.
But what does this all mean for you in your own unique life? What are those subtle body cues you might be missing in your daily routine? And if you started paying attention to them, what could you learn about yourself and the world around you?
These are big questions, and we're not going to answer them for you. But we encourage you to take what we've discussed today and start experimenting with this 50-50 practice in your own life.
That's right. See what happens when you start tuning into those physical sensations?
Yeah.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
And that's it for part 1 of our deep dive. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore some practical tips for incorporating the 50-50 practice into your daily life and discuss how you can use this newfound awareness to create positive change in your world.
Until then, keep exploring.
Welcome back to our deep dive on the 50-50 mindfulness practice. In part 1, we explored the core concept of, splitting your attention between your body and your environment, using Sophia's experiences as a guide. Now let's get practical.
Absolutely. Let's talk about how you can actually start using this technique in your everyday life.
Perfect. Because I'm already thinking about all those moments where this could be helpful. Like, what about when I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed? Can this practice actually help me manage those kind of intense emotions?
Definitely. The article emphasizes that your body can act like a barometer for your stress levels.
Oh,
By tuning into those physical sensations, maybe a tightness in your chest or a racing heart, you're not trying to ignore or suppress the stress, but rather just acknowledge it and understand its impact on you.
so instead of getting swept away by the stress, I can use those physical cues to ground myself and maybe even choose a different course of action.
Exactly. Let's say you're facing a looming deadline, right? And you notice your shoulders kind of creeping up towards your ears.
Yeah.
That physical awareness can be a signal to take a break, do some stretches, or maybe even reevaluate your approach to the task at hand.
That makes so much sense. It's like giving yourself permission to pause and listen to what your body is telling you before pushing forward on autopilot.
hmm The article also highlights how this practice can be incredibly useful in relationships, especially during those difficult conversations.
Mm.
Remember Sophia's experience with her partner and the peanut butter jar?
Oh, yeah. That was such a great example of how tuning into her own physical reactions helped her understand the situation better and avoid unnecessary conflict.
Exactly. So imagine you're having a disagreement with someone you care about. Instead of just reacting to their words, try noticing what's happening in your own body. Are you feeling tense, defensive? Are you holding your breath?
That's interesting. So it's almost like using those physical sensations as data points to understand my own emotional state before responding to the other person.
Exactly. It can help you to de-escalate the situation and communicate more effectively. And it can also give you valuable insights into your own patterns and triggers.
Okay, I'm sold. But let's say I'm completely new to this. How do I actually start incorporating the 50-50 practice into my daily life? Do I need to set aside specific time for it, like meditation?
You certainly could incorporate it into a formal meditation practice, but the beauty of the 50-50 approach is that you can weave it into any moment of your day.
So I don't need to sit on a cushion and chant to get the benefits.
Not unless you want to. The article suggests starting small. Choose one activity or interaction where you can bring in this 50-50 awareness. It could be something as simple as brushing your teeth, walking the dog, or having a cup of coffee.
Okay, so walk me through an example. Let's say I'm making my morning coffee. How would I apply the 50-50 practice in that scenario?
As you're grinding the beans, notice the sound of the grinder, the aroma filling the air, the feeling of the beans under your fingers. Then bring your attention to your body. Notice your breath, the feeling of your feet on the floor, the warmth of the mug in your hands.
So it's like I'm holding both the internal and the external in my awareness simultaneously, but not necessarily focusing on them with equal intensity at every moment.
Exactly. It's a gentle dance between your inner world and the outer world. And as you get more comfortable with the practice, you can start applying it in more challenging situations like those tricky relationships we talked about earlier.
It sounds like building a muscle. You wouldn't start weightlifting with the heaviest weights on day one.
Precisely. Start with something manageable, like noticing your breath while washing the dishes, and gradually work your way up to using the practice during more emotionally charged moments.
That makes sense. And what about those times when I completely forget about the practice? I'm guessing that's going to happen a lot, especially at the beginning.
Absolutely. And that's okay. It's a practice, not a performance. There will be times when you get so caught up in your thoughts or the demands of your day that you lose track of your body.
So what do I do when that happens? Beat myself up for not being mindful enough?
Not at all.
Yeah.
The key is to simply notice when you've drifted away from the 50-50 split and gently guide your attention back to the present moment, to those physical sensations.
It's all about cultivating this awareness of where my attention is going and gently guiding it back to that balanced state.
Exactly. And as you do that, you'll start to notice subtle cues from your body that you might have been missing all along. Signs of stress, excitement, joy, sadness.
It's like our bodies are constantly sending us messages, but we're often too busy or distracted to listen.
And by tuning into those messages, we can gain valuable insights into ourselves, our emotions, and our relationship with the world around us.
This is making me think about how differently I might approach a meeting at work. If I'm consciously tuning into my body, Instead of just focusing on the agenda and the tasks at hand, I could be noticing my own physical reactions to the conversation and to the other people in the room.
That's a great example. Imagine how much more effectively you could communicate if you were aware of your own physical cues and the cues of those around you.
Right. Instead of just reacting, I could be responding with greater awareness and intentionality. This is really exciting stuff.
And remember, this practice isn't about achieving some kind of perfect state of mindfulness. It's about cultivating a kind and curious awareness of your own experience, moment to moment.
That's a really important point. It's not about judging ourselves for not being mindful enough, but rather, about approaching this practice with a sense of gentleness and self-compassion.
Exactly. Yeah. And as you continue to explore this practice, remember to celebrate the small victories. Notice those moments when you're able to catch yourself getting swept away by your thoughts or emotions and gently bring your attention back to your body.
So instead of striving for perfection, I'm simply focusing on showing up with curiosity and a willingness to learn from my own experience.
Precisely. And over time, you'll find that this practice becomes more and more integrated into your daily life, helping you navigate challenges, deepen your relationships, and make choices that are aligned with your true self.
This all sounds incredibly promising, but I'm wondering if there are any situations where this 50-50 practice might not be the most beneficial approach. Are there times when it might be better to prioritize our mental focus over our physical sensations?
That's a really insightful question. And you're right, there are definitely situations where shifting your attention to your body might not be the most helpful strategy.
Like what? Give me an example.
Let's say you're in a situation that requires your full cognitive attention, like performing surgery or navigating a complex mathematical problem. In those cases, it might be more effective to temporarily minimize your awareness of bodily sensations in order to maximize your mental focus.
That makes sense. It's like a surgeon probably wouldn't want to be hyper aware of their own heart rate or hand tremors while they're operating.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that the 50-50 practice is a tool, and like any tool, it's most effective when used appropriately for the task at hand.
So it's about having the awareness and the flexibility to adjust our approach based on the specific demands of the situation.
Precisely. And as you continue to practice and experiment, you'll develop a deeper understanding of when and how to apply this technique in a way that best serves you.
This has been such an enriching conversation. We've covered so much ground already, from the basic concept of the 50-50 practice to its potential benefits, practical tips for getting started, and even some important considerations for applying it wisely.
It's been a fascinating exploration, and I'm excited for you to continue this journey of self-discovery as you integrate the 50-50 practice into your own life.
But before we send you off on your own mindful adventures, we want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as we transition into the last part of our deep dive.
Intriguing. What's the final thought you have in mind?
Well, we've talked a lot about how this practice can help us understand ourselves better, but what if we take it a step further? What if paying attention to our own bodies could also be a gateway to greater empathy and understanding in our relationships with others?
That's a powerful question, and one that we'll delve into more deeply in the final part of our deep dive.
Exactly. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll explore the profound connection between body awareness, empathy, and the transformative potential of the 50-50 practice in our relationships with others.
Until then, keep exploring.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive on the 50-50 mindfulness practice. We've explored the concept, the benefits, and even some practical tips. Now I'm really curious to explore this idea we touched on at the end of part 2, the connection between body awareness, empathy, and relationships.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area. The idea is that by becoming more attuned to our own bodily sensations, we might actually become more sensitive to the unspoken cues and emotions of others.
Okay, that makes sense on an intuitive level, but how does it actually work?
Well, research suggests that there are mirror neurons in our brains that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that same action.
So if I see someone smiling, the same neurons in my brain might fire as if I were smiling myself.
Exactly. And this mirroring effect isn't limited to physical actions. It also seems to apply to emotions. So when you see someone experiencing sadness, for example, your brain might simulate a similar feeling of sadness in your own body, even if you're not consciously aware of it.
That's incredible. So it's like our bodies are constantly picking up on these subtle emotional cues from the people around us, even if our minds aren't consciously processing them.
Precisely. And the 50-50 practice can help us to become more aware of those subtle bodily responses, which can then enhance our empathy and understanding.
So instead of just intellectually understanding that someone is upset, I might actually start to feel a resonance of that emotion in my own body, which would then allow me to connect with them on a deeper level.
Exactly. And that deeper connection can then lead to more compassionate communication and more fulfilling relationships.
This is making me think about those times when I've completely misread someone's emotional state because I was so caught up in my own, thoughts or anxieties.
We've all been there. But the 50-50 practice can help us to step out of those mental loops and tune into the present moment, to what's happening in our own bodies and in the bodies of those around us.
So it's almost like this practice is giving us a superpower, the ability to truly see and understand the people in our lives, not just with our minds, but with our whole beings.
I love that analogy. And like any superpower, it takes practice to develop and refine. But with time and intention, you can cultivate this capacity for deep empathy and connection.
So for our listeners who are eager to cultivate the superpower, what are some specific ways they can use the 50-50 practice to enhance their relationships?
Well, one simple but powerful practice is to bring the 50-50 awareness to your conversations. As you're listening to someone speak, notice what's happening in your own body. Are you feeling tension, openness? Is your breath shallow or deep?
So instead of just focusing on the words being spoken, I'm also paying attention to my own physical response to what's being said and to the other person's nonverbal cues.
Exactly. And by noticing those subtle cues, you can gain valuable insights into the emotional landscape of the conversation, which can then, guide your responses.
This reminds me of that advice to listen with your whole body, not just your ears. It's like we're expanding our capacity for listening by incorporating our physical sensations into the equation.
Precisely. And as you practice this kind of embodied listening, you'll likely find that your relationships become more authentic, more compassionate, and more fulfilling.
This has been such an incredible journey. We've gone from the basics of splitting our attention to exploring the profound impact this practice can have on our understanding of ourselves, our relationships, and even our place in the world.
It's been a privilege to explore these ideas with you, and I hope that our listeners feel inspired to embark on their own explorations of the 50-50 practice and its transformative potential.
And remember, this is just the beginning of the journey. As you continue to practice and experiment, you'll discover new insights and applications that are unique to your own life and relationships.
That's the beauty of it. It's an ongoing process of discovery, and each moment offers a fresh opportunity to tune in, connect, and grow.
And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the 50-50 mindfulness practice. Until next time, keep exploring.